Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to this week's episode of Ask Mish. All right, I have a guest. We have a guest on today, which I'm very excited about. A new guest. So we're gonna have her on. You're gonna meet her in a second. We're getting close to like the holidays, Thanksgiving, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna be hitting you guys with obviously like all the nutrition and weight loss things for the holidays coming up. That's not what today's question's about, but we're gonna have that coming up. So make sure that you guys are following us on Instagram at ask_mish on Instagram. I'm gonna link it in the show notes. You guys can ask me all of your questions, particularly related to surviving the holidays, weight loss, like how to do all the things, because you guys know my specialty in life is like working the system. It's learning to enjoy yourself while also like keeping your weight loss goals and all that stuff in check. So I'm very much so an and girl, not an or girl. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So make sure you guys are following on Instagram. Ask me all your questions there. Also, if you wouldn't mind, make sure if you guys are not subscribed to this podcast already, make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to do me like a solid, like a real solid, I would love if you would rate it 5 stars. That would be amazing. So with Thanksgiving and all the holidays coming up comes my favorite holiday, which is Black Friday, which I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm upset. I used to love Black Friday. Like I still love it. Don't get me wrong, but it was my sport. Like I was up at 3 in the morning. I was at the mall by 4. I like knew my stores. I knew which stores had which deals and at what time they expired. Like I would be in this one before 6 a.m. because if you got it before 6 a.m., you got the special. Like it was my sport. And I just feel like now it's like Black Friday month and like I love it. It just takes the competition and the fun out of it. But that being said, it's still my favorite holiday. So we're going to be celebrating with discounts on all things Nutrish, Mish Mindset, all that kind of stuff. So I'll be linking in the show notes where you guys can find that stuff. We're going to have some stuff drop now. We're going to have a lot of stuff drop Black Friday, though. So make sure that you guys are tuned in so you don't miss out on any of our fun deals because I only really discount stuff on Black Friday because it's my holiday. It's how I celebrate. All right, let's get into this week's question. I like this question a lot because this is something that I used to struggle with personally. Dear Mish, I've always had a hard time making decisions. My indecisiveness caused analysis paralysis, and I'm constantly second guessing myself. Anyway, at the moment, I have a huge decision that I have to make. It involves changing careers, moving. My anxiety is literally through the roof. It truly feels as though there's a right and a wrong decision that I could make here, and I don't know which one it is. I keep asking family, I keep asking friends. Everyone has a different answer. I literally don't know what to do. How do you become a decisive person and overcome analysis paralysis? Please help. This is something that I personally struggled with. And as I got older, I struggled with it less and less. But when it came to like really big decisions, I found myself extremely indecisive. And during one big decision at one point in my life, I found myself working with this amazing woman named Christina, who is one of my friends now. And she really helped give me like a framework and the motivation and the understanding of like what it means to truly decide. So I was like, when I saw this question, I was like, I have to have Christina on and we have to have like a little convo about it. So everybody, welcome Christina to the podcast. She's awesome. All of her information will be linked in the show notes. But let's welcome Christina to this episode of Ask Mish. So, hi, Christina. Welcome to the podcast.
It's about fucking time you asked me.
I know. I'm sorry. Actually, no. You were literally like. So I had Nick, my boyfriend, on as my first guest. Just like you're like literally my first like legit guest. So like.
I'm so excited because I am so proud of this podcast. I would like. I think I'm the first person who told you, Michelle, this is your calling. This is what you need to do. This is going to take the fuck off. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm proud of you.
You were. And then it took me a year of questioning it before I did it. So that's, but listen, I like eventually you got there and we did it. So I'm so excited. So, Christina, give a little bit of background on yourself just so our audience like knows about you. Cause I think you have like the coolest like background ever. So just tell everybody like a little bit about you.
For sure. So I definitely now do like more of mindset performance business coaching. But before that, I was in the professional golf sphere. So I started playing golf really late in life when I was like 18, went to college. I was really good in college. I won 5 times. I was an All-American. I turned pro, played for like 3 years. And then I started hosting like corporate and charity events. So basically what that means is executives used to hire me to play golf with them and their clients. And we used to do business deals on the golf course and then go to dinner and hang out and fly around and do all the fun things. And it was wonderful and awesome, but I needed to do a lot of personal self-development on myself in order to get myself to a space that I really liked myself and I really liked my life. And funny enough, it wasn't all of the glitz and glam that really made me the most happy. The most happy I've ever been in my whole entire life has probably been the last 10 to 12 years. And I'm just decided it's my turn. It's like I have this amazing life. I love my clients. I love what I get to do. And I just, choose joy and things that make me money and things that make me happy every day.
Which is amazing. Now, like you just like glossed over like all of that. Like your life is so impressive. And like the thing that really hit me the most when I first met you, and this was like the question that we were sort of asking is all about being like decisive and like how do you like know if you're making the right decision? And I've actually had experience with you just throughout working together, whatever, like where I was a lot less decisive than I am now to pivot from being a pro golfer, which my favorite part of your story you left out, you were on a reality show, which is like my dream. And you're just like, oh yeah, no big deal. Like you like had this kind of like the dream life, right? And then you just like pivoted and you're like, no, I'm going to do business development now. Like how did like, before we kind of get into like the questions about decisiveness, like how did you decide to do that? Like what did that internal process look like to you?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. So you are what everyone said. My life was so amazing because I was on television, I was on reality shows, I was getting paid tons of money, I was flying around, staying at beautiful hotels and private planes and doing all the fun things. But that was not what made me happy. Those things were just very much like an external validation and thinking that like if I got the next job, the next career, lost the next weight, got the next contract, I would be happy. And I just wasn't. And so for me, I got to a point that I was tired of chasing the like next thing in order to be happy. And I just had to figure out like what happiness meant to me. And so for me, it was really learning that like I truly do believe that like your life is controlled by the way that you think. And when you think a certain way and when you believe a certain way and you take actions based upon those beliefs, you can actually create a life that you're really obsessed with. And I started to create a life that was really in alignment to me, that I really loved. And then people started to come to me to see how they could do the same thing. And that involved business and mindset and personal and professional. And that's how you and I connected, which was crazy. And so yeah, I mean, that really for me, the pivot was not an option. It had to happen because the life that externally I was living was not a life that was in alignment to me. The life that I live now, I still have bits and pieces of that life, but it's so now in alignment to me.
So like the way you're talking about it makes total sense. And it's obviously like in the perspective of like where you're at currently. If like I were to put you back in time to like when you were like, did you like I feel like people really don't make big life decisions like that until there's like a huge pain point or until they feel like they hit it like a rock bottom. Like, did you like have that moment? Like, what did it actually look like in real time if you can remember from like the time that
Oh,
you
I remember it so crystal clear. And that's like, I think that you're bang on. I've always asked people, because, on my podcast, the Decide It's Your Turn podcast, I've had some great guests as well. And, I've always asked people, do you think that you can make these big pivots unless you kind of have those rock bottom moments? And I think the answer is probably yes, but I do think it's a lot easier when you kind of have these come to Jesus rock bottom moments. And for me, the rock bottom moment was I had a horrible eating disorder. I hated my life so much. I did not like myself. I was so mean to myself. And I knew that if something didn't change, I was going to perhaps lose my life. I was definitely going to lose my relationships. And you can't operate out of hating yourself to success for a long period of time. It does work, and I want people to hear that. It does work for a short period of time, but it doesn't work for an extended period of time. And I kind of had that rock bottom moment at 27 years old where I was like, this is not working and this is not going to end well. And in that moment, obviously I say moment, but it was like a few month period of time, I just knew that there was other people on planet Earth that were happy that had a lot less than me. And my only fixation at the time was how the fuck did they do that? Like, how is that humanly possible? Because in my brain, I believed that the stuff and the accolades and the looks and all of those things were going to make me happy. And I had to realize that like there obviously was something that I didn't know. And for me, it was the mindset, it was the belief, it was the decisions, it was so much of that stuff. And learning that like when you can control your mind, you can control your thoughts, you can control your reality. And like I just didn't know that. Like it was like did not know it. And so when I started to learn that, it was like that was the propeller that kind of motivated me.
And so like did you, because I mean I'm, you know me, I'm a huge belief of like the thoughts reality situation. Like
100%.
when you actually like made the decision to completely like do a one, was it like a swift, like you were just like, I'm changing my life today, I never thought you're crazy, or did it like happen in like drips and drabs? Like what did the actual like transformation look like of your life from what it was to what it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, it was kind of fast, but it was also, it felt in the moment that it wasn't going anywhere. But I decided that I had to like do something else. And so how it really started was I have a buddy of mine. He was on my podcast. He's like a mentor of mine, but he was probably one of the most positive people I ever knew. And I went to him for golf, and he's a golf instructor still to this day. He works with some of the biggest golf professionals out there. But what I think he is an expert in is the positive mindset, in the belief and his faith. You know me, I'm a God person, but for me it was like a combination of his mindset and his faith. And I started kind of paying attention to what he did and what he like looked at and who he listened to. And this was way back like at 27, I'm 42 now, so like, you know, that was a long time ago, 15 years ago. It was like YouTube videos and books. And so I started with books like You Are a Badass, Gifts of Imperfection, Chase the Lion. It was just like books that were on like positive affirmations and you know, your beliefs and like what you think about yourself. And so that slowly but surely started to change. And also too, I was so sick. Like I know you work with a ton of people that do have, you know, relationships with food. And for me, it was really never about the food. And I'm sure you see that all the time. It was never about the food. It was about, for me, it was like, if I was good, quote unquote, good, I treated myself well. And if I was bad, AKA I gained a pound, or I didn't get a contract, or I was playing bad golf, or someone didn't like me, I would manipulate my food. And I had, you know, bulimia. And so for me, it was like, I just knew I was so sick. I didn't want to act that way anymore. I didn't want to do that anymore. And I will say, like, and I'm sure you know that this more than I do, I truly believe that there was like a higher power that has washed over me in some regard. And I do believe it is definitely my mindset as well, because I have been 100% so good with food for probably like the last 8 years. I don't even think about food anymore, which is so crazy that someone can do that. But I do believe it's just like, I like myself so much. I like my life so much that I want to treat myself well. And I don't really look at food as good or bad. And I know you talk about that a ton. And so for me, that was a big part of the reprogramming for sure. But yeah, it was slowly but surely. Like my life just started to get better. And the more you start to like yourself, and the more you believe that good things are coming to you, and the more action that you take, it's a positive momentum. It starts to like snowball. And I'm very, 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 very lucky that I have a partner who kind of got on board with self-development. I went to every fucking program you could possibly go to. I read every book. I became addicted to the process of self-development because I just knew that I was doing better and feeling better. And so it has been a journey, but I think like once you kind of start the journey, it's like a snowball. It just gets easier and faster.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, so if someone's like listening to this and they're like, okay, amazing, but maybe I don't have a supportive partner and I don't have like hundreds of bajillions of dollars to put towards this. I know you mentioned like books and like YouTube, like what are some good sources that someone could start with if they're like, okay, what she's saying is like making sense, but I have like limited resources and I just want to like learn more. Like, where's a good starting point, do you think, for someone who's struggling like that?
Perfect. So I will say I did not have bazillions of dollars in the beginning. I just decided that like that's where I was going to spend my money. You know, like your background behind you. Lots
I
of
was wait,
amazing.
can I say something funny? As you were talking, I was staring. I was like, our backgrounds are perfect depictions of how different we are. Yours is like sports and everything, and mine's like
Mine
bag.
is all sports, and yours is like Louboutins, Chanel bags, and like, is that an Hermes bag, the pink one?
No, no, it's
Oh,
no, I don't know. No, it's a Saint Laurent one, but no.
okay.
I was dead because I was like literally thinking that I was like, oh my God, our backgrounds are the perfect depiction of how opposite we are.
Exactly. We're so fucking opposite, and I love you to death.
Same.
But anyway, all of that to be said is like I didn't have like I've never been poor, like for sure, but like I didn't come from money, but I've always worked. So it's not like I was like fucking scraping to like eat. But I didn't have like piles of money to invest in myself. I just knew that like, instead of buying a bag or instead of going on a trip or something, I just had to invest in this thing that was actually making me happy, which was going to events, being around like-minded people, investing in mentors. And like, that's just where I devoted my money. Like everyone said, most people who are probably listening to this podcast, you make decisions with your money. And I can look at your credit card statement and tell you what you value in life. End of story. I just valued at that season of my life, I valued personal development. I valued investing in myself because it was the one thing that was actually making me happy. And it was the one thing that like literally was changing my life. So I just fucking figured it out. I think everyone kind of comes to that point, no matter what it is, that they'll just fucking figure it out. So I
Yeah.
will say that. But like, there's where you invest your time and where you invest your money, I can tell you what your life is like. But all of that to be said is, I mean, there's tons of podcasts. My podcast, the Decide It's Your Turn podcast, but there's tons of books. There's so many personal development books. YouTube, University of YouTube now. I mean, you can find anything in the world on YouTube. If you want something bad enough, there's so many free resources in the world in order to get it. But I would say podcasts, books, YouTube videos. If you're really struggling, I know a lot of your audience is into the, like, relationship with food and stuff like that. I think you really have to heal. And I'm sure you agree with this because I've always told you you're like a mindset coach for food. But really what I think, if you heal the relationship you have with yourself, the food is just a byproduct. So there's a lot of good resources. People can reach out to me on social media, be Christina, and I'm happy to send you books that I've read. I have hundreds of books that I've read on, the self-development world, on really learning to love yourself, like yourself, reprogram your mind. But a few good ones. You Are a Badass right off the bat. That was a big one for me. And like The Gifts of Imperfection, I will say, by Brene Brown. I'm not a huge fan of her, but like that book was one of the big instrumental ones for me in the beginning.
I love that. Yeah, maybe we'll put together a little Christina Rec book and we'll link it in the show notes so that
Yeah,
people
for
can
sure.
reach out, and we'll link all Christina's information in there as well. All right, so so we're getting to like decision making, right? So I speak with a lot of people, especially since I've, obviously been doing the nutrition for a long time. And then I've kind of branched out into doing more like, like greater healing for the people who just, there's bigger, deeper problems, and like the food is sort of a symptom of that. And indecisiveness is a big one. And it, I think, has lots to do with, internal versus external validation. But like, why do you feel like people struggle with making decisions, like in general? Like, why do you feel like that's something that's so hard for people to do and they get like analysis paralysis over it?
100%. Women in particular, I work with both men and women, and I'll tell you, women in particular have a very hard time making a decision. And a lot of it, I mean, I can go into like the psychology of it. A lot of it is like the childhood stuff, and we could always go into that if you wanted to. But I think in the grand scheme of it, most women are afraid to make a mistake. You and I were talking kind of years ago when we were working together, and I said, you just have to decide, like, about this certain situation. You just have to decide. And I think that like when you're in it, like I'm sure we can go into that, but like when you're
When
in
you
it,
when
it's
you said that to me, like I didn't know what it meant. I was like, okay, cool. Like I get it. Like I get it. I have to decide. But to me, and I think I even said this to you at the time, like it felt like there was a wrong decision. Like it felt like, okay, there is like a path for me and I could make the right choice or I could make the wrong choice. And I didn't understand your philosophy. I do now, but I didn't at the time. So like, because at the time it felt like there was a right and a wrong decision. So like how can you get through that little mess of feeling like there is a right and a wrong? Like, what is your philosophy on that?
my philosophy is very clear, and not everyone understands it, but I think at some point in time, perhaps like yourself, you were saying, you will understand what I mean by there's never a wrong decision. I truly, from the bottom of my soul, believe that there's not a wrong decision, because that allows me to operate very quickly. It allows me to make a decision and move the fuck on. Because if I operate of there's no wrong decision here, there's either the decision that I'm glad I made, or the decision of, okay, cool, that's just feedback for what I'm going to do next time. And sometimes decisions do have consequences. But sitting in indecision is one of the worst things that I think I can possibly do,
Literal worst.
because you're sitting there not taking any action. And what I believe is that every single person, when you take an action, at least you're getting feedback. At least you're getting, knowledge of like, wow, I'll do this again, or no, I'm not going to do this, or you know what, this worked, but this didn't. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it is the fact that like I was so miserable for my 20s that I have this weird sense that I think a lot of people unfortunately have if they've like lost someone or they've had this big traumatic event in their lives. But I have this like sixth sense of knowing that like life is so unbelievably short, and I operate, I think, quite well because of this, that like I don't fuck around when it comes to time. Time is my most valuable asset. I say no to so many things. I say yes to so many things. I do not do things that I don't want to do. I'm very clear on what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And for me, sitting in indecision is the biggest fucking waste of time. I have heard before, and you can probably Google it or chat GPT it, but they say the billionaires of the world, they really tried to make no decisions in their day besides the most impactful decisions. So it's like, like Steve Jobs, he always wore black. Warren Buffett, he eats the exact same thing, does the exact same thing, because decision fatigue is real. And so the high achievers, the high performers, those people who are making these big decisions literally only want to make one or two decisions because those are the ones that are going to make the biggest impact in their lives. And so I think all of us sometimes we sit in so much indecision. Should I wear this? Should I do this? Should I break up with this person? Should I eat this? Should I do this? No, fuck that. Make a decision, move on.
How can you, what if you had somebody and they're like, okay, cool, that sounds amazing, but I'm not as brave as you, and I don't have the strong belief system that you have right now. I'm working towards it. If someone's kind of thinking that, they're like, okay, that sounds great, but like I'm here in fear and you're there. What could be like a practice or like something that they can do to start to like hear that internal voice and like start to get in touch with what the quote unquote right decision is for them? Like, do you have anything where people can kind of like start from fear and move closer to like where you're at today?
Yes. So a simple thing, and funny enough, it comes back to like kind of food nutrition stuff, is if you are afraid to make the wrong decision, because ultimately a lot of people are afraid to make the wrong decision, right? I want you to go the next time you go to a restaurant, I literally want you to set a timer. Because there is certain people, and my mom will never listen to this podcast, so I can say this. My mom is afraid to make a decision. My mom has, and I could probably tell you all the reasons why, and most people are probably the exact same way, comes from their childhood, blah, 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 blah. And, that's the stuff that I dig in with clients because it is more than blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, set a timer on a menu. You have 1 minute. You have to make a decision, because there are some people, Michelle, honest to God, that are afraid to choose something on the menu because they're afraid of making the wrong decision, because they feel like it's such a big deal. Like, oh gosh, should I have the shrimp or should I have the chicken? But what if the chicken is bad? And it is just a mind fuck of how many people waste time, energy, effort, stress, emotional bandwidth on the simplest little things. So that's something that you can do. Go to a restaurant. You have 1 minute to make a decision. And if you order the chicken and it sucks, good news. Next time you don't have to do that, but you have to make the decision. The same thing, go into your closet. A lot of people have a hesitancy in their closet of like dressing themselves in the morning. You literally have 1 minute, pick an outfit, let's go. And if you don't like it today, great news. You can pick a different one tomorrow. But those little tiny steps are ways in which you can start learning how to make quick decisions.
Yeah, and I think another thing is also like maybe even do a almost like an audit afterwards and be like, okay, so I made this decision. How did it feel? And then if it felt wrong, okay, well, what was the actual repercussion? And like worst comes to worst, like I tell our clients, if something goes wrong during the week, like learn from it and like you can grow from it or whatever. But it just kind of like gets you out of that like analysis paralysis thing where you're not doing anything. And that dull pain is worse than the pain of making a wrong decision, I think, any day over time, for sure.
100%. And that's like, I'm glad that you said it, because I think that that's true. Like, I think the more decisions you start to make, and you will make some quote unquote wrong decisions, but the more you do that, I think you'll come to see that it's like better than sitting in the indecision.
Yeah. And sometimes I think also for people, it's helpful to understand like why they're indecisive, which a lot of it obviously comes from like childhood parents, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like and I think when people understand why they are the way they are and that not everyone is like that, and that means you can change, I think the more information people have as to like the why, it almost like empowers them a little bit. So like for like your clients who, I mean, I could probably speak on this too, but like for your clients who you see are indecisive, what are some common like childhood things that pop up that like lead to indecisiveness as adults?
Absolutely. So one of the big common themes is like, let's say your parents always told you were doing the wrong thing. So like no matter what decision you made, it was wrong. Like let's say your dad was, really hard on you and he always like, oh, you should have done this, you could have done better. Well, it's like there's a little child inside of you that is literally has the belief that it doesn't matter what you do, you're doing it wrong. So that can cause you to literally be afraid to make a decision. Another thing that I see is that you have like an overbearing parent. So let's say you
Oh,
like,
that was mine, I think.
yeah, you have an overbearing parent who comes, like, let's say you're told to clean your room. You go and clean your room, but your mom comes in behind you and cleans up after you. What your subconscious is really telling you most of the time is that I did this wrong because I couldn't trust myself or I couldn't do the thing that I was told to do because no matter what I did, it was wrong. Someone had to come behind me. Let's say you made your bed, but your mom always came in and remade your bed. There's this little subconscious inside of you that's saying you didn't do it right. So everything that you're now doing as an adult, you almost feel like you're not sure if you're going to do it right. Obviously, like I'd have to like talk to the person, and
Yeah, we're talking generally.
I'm not a therapist, even though a lot of it feels like it some days. But I will say that like those are just two situations, and perhaps that's a like an aha moment for you in the fact that like, oh my gosh, yeah, like my mom always told me to do something, but no matter how I did it, I was always wrong. So you fast forward as an adult, of course you're nervous about making a decision because there's a little kid inside of you that believes no matter what decision I make, I'm gonna do it wrong.
Yeah, and I think like like because I used to be very indecisive, and I realized at some point it was because I just never exercised that muscle. I never like practiced doing it. Like I was never like taught to make decisions, be like, okay, this was and this was right or this wasn't right. Now you have to like deal with it. Like it was just always they were made for me, or they were wrong, or like which made me feel like my instincts were wrong. And like look, my mom does listen to this podcast, so like I get it. No one hands you a manual and you're a parent, and like this is what you do, so I get it. But like for everybody else that's listening, just like sort of sometimes understanding like why, you are the way you are, but like understanding you can change it. Like right now I'm the most decisive person in the world, but like I wasn't always. So I think it's nice to hear that, okay, you can change that about yourself if you don't like that about yourself.
Oh, 100%. And the thing that you said about your mom, whether my mom listens to this or your mom listens to this is never, I talk a lot on my podcast and my mom does listen to my podcast too sometimes. But I will say it's never about bashing our parents. Our parents, like you said, what?
No, never, no, never. Honestly, it's so
Never.
interesting to me now as an adult, like dissecting all the things I was like annoying, like an annoying teenager about, and now being like, oh my God, I totally get it. But like, all of those things like come out in consequences, positives or negatives, and like it's our responsibility as adults now to correct those things. It's not our parents' fault. It's your responsibility as an adult to be like, okay, this stuff worked for me. I love this, but this stuff isn't working, and you could either like blame your parents and like do it all, or you could actually like do the work and change it about yourself and understand that that's an option. I think sometimes people don't realize that's an option.
That's 100% the honest to God truth. It's what I believe wholeheartedly. Our parents did the best that they could with what they had. There is not one person, no matter what you think. I know that there's certain people listening to your podcast that think people on the internet have these perfect lives and they must have nothing wrong. That's a lie. We've all been fucked up by our parents because our parents are screwed up people too. We are all wounded people. But as an adult, it is your responsibility to change things that you want to change in your life. I always, a couple of big ones for me are the decision making, the confidence, and the money. Those are three things that my parents didn't have a ton of success in. And I knew that, and there's a lot of things that I got from my parents that have absolutely been brilliant. But those couple of things that my parents, I did not want to carry on those thoughts, habits, patterns, beliefs. So it was my job as an adult to say, I'm keeping that, but I'm changing this. And it is up to you listening to this podcast as well to do the exact same thing. That's the only way it changes, is if you decide that I'm no longer my parents' habits, patterns, and stories, and I'm going to change this shit.
Yeah, I love that. So for someone listening and they're like, okay, I get all of it. Can you, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit, so if you can't,
Yeah.
but like, what would be like a framework that someone could sort of follow if this is like, they're like, all right, I get it, but like I need almost like step-by-step instructions, like how to, and I'm not saying like a small decision, a menu thing. Like, let's say they're like moderately big decisions. Let's say it's like, you know, ending a relationship, or let's say it's like, do I want to move, or do I want to like take this job? Like there's some stake in the game, and I'm gonna have two different versions of my life. Like if I go left or I go right, like what's a framework that someone can start to take to feel more comfortable with making a decision?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like if it's a big decision, like a kind of like a life type of changing decision, we all know. Something that I think
Oh,
that I've all, pardon?
that's interesting that you said that.
Oh, we all know 100%. One of the things that I hope every single person who's ever worked with me leaves knowing is that they can trust themselves. That's ultimately what I want people to come out of it, is like, you were born knowing. As a person of faith, I believe that we all have, like, whether you believe in God or not, but for me, I just believe that we were given an intuition. We were given that small, still voice, that God voice. I call it the God voice, but intuition, whatever you want to call it. You know, we all know deep down inside, we know what to do. And yet, society, friends, family, Instagram, whatever it is, keeps us from doing the thing that we need to do. So, one of the things that I hope so many people get from me is learning to trust that still small voice, learning to pay attention to it, because we all know. And whether you paid attention to it in the beginning, but now it's becoming, much more clear, and you want to ignore it because it's hard, whether it's moving, going through a divorce, ending your career, doing something different. I'm not saying that any of this shit is a cakewalk, but I am saying it's so worth it when you actually do the thing that you want to do, that you know you need to do. And so I would say, pay attention. I call it the God whisperer, the small still voice. It's like a siren inside of you once you learn how to pay attention to it. But if you pay attention to that, there's really no wrong answer, because you keep paying attention to that. You're going to keep making the next right decision for the time. And also too, like let's say moving or whatever. What's the worst thing that can happen? Like a lot of times, move back, go back to it. People who are afraid to change their careers. I work with a lot of people who want to like start their business or do the thing, right? And it's like they want to leave career. Well, is someone going to take away the 20 plus years you had in corporate experience? No, you still have that. You still have all of those things. So you can come back to it. It may not be the exact job, it may not be the exact location, but like no one's going to take that away from you.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people that I speak to, at least like in counseling or whatever, and probably because of just the parental trauma or whatever, they are very used to taking the opinions or feelings or whatever of everybody else into consideration when making those decisions. And like sometimes it's like silly. Like sometimes it's like, oh, what will my friends think? What will people on social media think? Like, and in that case, like you can write that off a little easier. But sometimes it's like, okay, but like, what about my kids and like school, and like what about like my significant other and things like that? Like, how do you like sort of like tease that out and like figure out like how important other people's opinions are, like when they're in your life and they can be impacted? Like, how do you tease that out? Because I think people are likely to put other people's needs sometimes before their own. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always easy. It's not always a clear cut, X and Y decision. But I also think too that, ultimately I'm a big proponent of, you've got to take care of you. It's that old analogy, put your air mask on before you put on everyone else's. And it's true in so many regards. It's true. You don't want to hurt your kids. So let's just say hypothetically, you stay in your marriage because you don't want to hurt your kids. but are you really not hurting your kids? And are you willing to hurt yourself for the rest of your life? Are you willing? And a lot of women would probably say that. They would probably say, yes, I'm willing to hurt myself for the rest of my life for my kids. But are you really? Like, are you really taking care of your kids? And I think that like you have to ask yourself those hard questions.
Yeah.
And if your cup is full, if you are a better version of yourself, can you take care of your kids better, perhaps on your own or doing your own thing without the, toxic spouse or whatever. Michelle knows this about me, but like one of the greatest things in my life is my husband. I'm so blessed. He's like the perfect thing I've ever done on this planet. But all of that to be said, when I was a mess at 27 years old, and I had been with Nathan since I was like, gosh, I think 20, can't
We've
remember
been together
exactly.
that long. You're
22 years. I know, I only look 22.
you actually kind of do, but wow, like half your life, literally half your life.
Yeah, it's more than half my life now.
Wait, that's
Um,
insane that you guys grew together like that. That's insane.
It's crazy. And I'm so, so, so grateful. But I will say this. I caveated that he is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. But at 27 years old, when I was kind of at my rock bottom moment, and I started to invest in myself and I started to like figure out my own shit, I had to do that, not knowing if my marriage was going to make it,
Mm.
not knowing if my husband was going to get on board with the work that I was doing on myself. I had to make that decision. And that is like detrimental to think. And I've got so, so lucky that my husband said, and he'll tell you this, he said it on our podcast together, like when we've done episodes together, he has said, I saw her starting to change. And it was a matter of me saying, I better get on board and like get my shit together. And or he could have just said, this bitch is changing and I'm not into this and I'm going to do something different. I got very, like, I'm not saying that I didn't get super lucky in that regard, because some guys would have just said, you're changing, you're out, whatever. But my husband did say, you know what? That would be super lazy of me, not for me to start figuring out my shit. And he got on board with self-development. He got on board with, the mindset stuff and all of that. And it has fast tracked his life and the way he takes care of himself and his business. Like, people always dog me online. Not a lot of people, but a few people dog me about, my life is because of my husband. You're right. My husband is very successful and it's great, but there's been a lot of things that I think my husband would have never have done without me.
Do people really
Kind of.
say that to you?
Oh God, yes. There was a girl one time, she sent me a DM. She's like, you brag about your business, but your life is because of your husband. And I was like, bitch, you're right. I couldn't have half the shit I have without my husband. But I think my husband would be the first person to tell you that he wouldn't have half the shit he has without me. And I'm very proud of that. Like, I'm very proud that we've both grown together. My husband has a coach. My husband has completely transformed his company, like with leadership and business and bringing in experts and doing all the things because he believes in it so heavily as well. But I had to like be willing to take the steps to heal myself, whether he was on board or not. I just got really lucky that he was on board.
And you know what? If he wasn't on board, right? Like, let's say he wasn't, you guys would have gotten divorced, broken up, whatever. And you would have found somebody that would be a better fit for you because you're the more developed person. So yeah, that might have been a travesty at the time. But if he was not willing to grow with you and he couldn't, or for whatever reason, like, then he wouldn't have been the right partner for you and you would have found somebody who was. So like, that's like a great example of like the decision can't be wrong as long as you're being true to yourself.
Amen. There you go. You said it.
Wait, I'm still stuck though on people saying to you online that you have everything you have because like your energy like is part of what supports that mechanism.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, like it's just like what, and honestly, the woman who said it, like I've had it happen about 3 or 4 times. And like there's some ugly people just in this world that are
Right.
just like obviously miserable in their own lives. But it's just interesting. Like, yes, my husband's business is very well financially and all of the things, but at the same time too, it's like bitch, I know how much money I make. I know what I do. I'm pretty positive that like I would not be homeless without my husband. So thanks very much.
I know, like you would, right, exactly. But like also, I think just like you are who you hang out with and who you like. So he's doing all this self development, he's doing all this stuff. I guarantee you, if we look at the trajectory of like where his business started doing stuff and his self development started, and when your self development started, I guarantee you they're all like in the same area.
150%. It is wild. So I can say this knowing that people won't probably listen to this, and I don't know how they would, but my husband was just hanging out with a couple of his college buddies this past weekend. Loves them to death. They're awesome, amazing people. But it's so interesting when you hang out with like your college buddies and you talk about old college stories and you talk about, remember when and all the stuff. And then you hang out with people that perhaps are in my husband's like YPO group or some of our friends where we're talking about like the now, the business decisions, the future, like what we're striving for, what we're going for. And it's not one's bad or one's worse. It's just, what do you want to be talking about? Do you want to talk about stories from 20 years ago when you were like drunk and who you're hanging out with and who is sleeping with who? Or do you want to be talking about, like, I just had one of my clients, she's become a good girlfriend, her and her husband and my husband, we went into a 4.5 hour dinner in Vegas, like about last month. And I mean, we sat there for 4.5 hours and we were just talking about like, you could do this in your business. You could do this. You could do this. How are you going to do this? What is the next plan for this? And it's just, where do you want to spend your time and your energy? There's, like I said, time is one of the most valuable assets. And it's like, what do you want to be around? What do you want to surround yourself with?
Yeah. And what I notice with the clients that I work with is that when they start to kind of like level up and like not even like with business, like a lot of my
Yep.
clients are not business owners, but like even when they just become like more decisive people, or they're like people pleasers and now they're starting to set boundaries, what happens every single time is like the people that they surround themselves with sort of like drop off, and then they like leave the space open for people that are like just more at their current level. And it's like kind of a weird process for them because it feels like for a second like, oh my god, no, I like set these boundaries, I like started making decisions, I started prioritizing myself, and now everyone's leaving me. But it's like that's those people were just there because of that old version of you in the first place.
Bingo. And it is like, and if anyone's listening to this and be like, oh my God, that is me. I'm in this season where I'm by myself. No one understands. Like, I want to be with these people. Like, how do you find them? I
Yeah.
will, I always say, continue to be that person. You will, like, people will find you.
So true.
Like attracts like, like literally, and continue to keep those boundaries, because if you let those old people in or you let that old version of yourself come back, you'll never find that next version of yourself. You'll never find those people who are your people. And it's amazing, like once you do, I think the older everyone gets, and maybe this is just me, but I think your circle gets smaller, but it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true. And I get people ask me that question all the time. They're like, well, when are these people coming? Or like, how do I feel? Like, it just, I don't know. Like, I've seen it happen with my clients. I've obviously experienced it myself. Like, it just kind of happens. You just sort of like attract those like higher vibrational people into your life. But it all just comes from like taking care of yourself and like loving yourself. And that like sounds cheesy, but like if you don't, other people are not going to love you the way that you want to. Like nobody would come to see me for nutrition if I didn't know about nutrition, So like that's why people come to see me, because I know how to do it. Like people aren't going to love you in the way that you should be loved if you don't love yourself. And if you struggle with indecisiveness, it's being like, out of touch with what your own wants and needs are. And, and that's got to heal. But so many people are uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, it's like none of this is fucking easy, but I always say it's like literally the greatest thing on planet Earth you will ever do. But it's like, if you're looking for an easy route, this ain't it.
Worth it though.
So worth it. It's like worth and I think too, like clients, I think over the years I've always heard it's like, once you know, you can't unknow it.
Yeah, I
It's
say
like,
that all the time.
literally, you can't unknow this shit like once you know it. And it's so annoying because sometimes you'd like to go back to just like this oblivious that like you're really like your thoughts control your reality and you're in control of your life and your decisions are in control of like everything that you actually fucking want. There are days where I'm just like, gosh, can I not just be so stupid to all of this and just go back to like existing?
Yeah, because then you have to really take responsibility for you're like, my life is like this because I made it this way, and then you have to like fix it.
Exactly. I did it. I fucking did this.
Yeah, I have that conversation often with myself. I get it. But yeah, no, it's so true. I tell my clients that too. Even like, your thoughts around food or dictating like how your reactions to them. If you're telling yourself you can't have something and then it's all you want, or you're like, oh my God, I look so fat today. And then like that's how you're treating yourself. Like the way that you're thinking, it dictates everything, which is nice because it means you have control over it, but it's also annoying because you have control over it.
Exactly.
Mhm. Awesome. Perfect. Any other advice that you have as far as people who struggle with like indecisiveness? Like what are any like actionable steps, any advice? Like what would you, anything else that we haven't covered or that you think you want to make a bigger point with?
Yeah, I think start small. I think like you probably know this too. I mean, I still share this with like people as an example. You always talk about the hamburger analogy,
Yeah.
if you've eaten 10 hamburgers, eat 9. You know what I mean? And I think that it's the same thing with making decisions. Start really small. Start making like little simple decisions every single day and hold yourself accountable to those decisions. I've branded myself for a very long time on confidence. I'm a very confident person. And I think a confident person has the ability, I make decisions with confidence, right? And confidence, I think, is just like a muscle. The more that you use it, the stronger it becomes. And I always say that you have to start really small. If I say that I'm going to drink, 6 glasses of water today, start with something that's just like so insignificant, like 6 glasses of water or whatever it is. And come high or hell water, you better drink those 6 glasses of water. And if you do that for a month straight, it's amazing how much more confident you'll be because you can trust yourself to do the thing that you say you're going to do. And that starts to snowball in everything. If you say, you're not going to drink a glass of wine today from coming home from work. If you just do that consistently over a week, it's amazing how much more confident you'll be because you can trust yourself to do the thing that you say you're going to do. And people don't really, I don't think people think about it, but like a confident person, oh, there's not much. Like I would take a confident person who trusts themselves to make a decision over a fucking Harvard grad all day, every day.
Mhm. Yeah, and so you have sort of like the athlete mentality around that, which that's what I call it. Because like Christina, obviously she was an athlete, where it's just like there's like discipline, and I'm just gonna like do it. So sometimes though people like don't have that, or like the pain of like not having the glass of wine or not doing it is almost like greater than like whatever it may be. Like people I think get very very like zoomed in. So like I think if you do struggle with that piece of it, where you're like, okay, I want to have the confidence, I want to do this, but like even starting there is too hard. If you could find a way to like make it feel good to yourself. So instead of being like, I'm not going to have wine tonight, be like, I'm going to have wine tomorrow. Like if you can kind of like work with your brain to like make the process like feel good, if like that sounds too overwhelming, like it's a good place to start. And then you have the confidence because you accomplish the same thing. But instead of just being like, oh, I can't do this, you just found a way that like felt better to you. I guess that makes
I
sense.
love that analogy. Yeah, that works too. I mean, it's just whatever you can do. Like I always say too, and I think I told you this when we were talking about your situation back then. It's like, how do you feel good? Like, how do you make yourself right? Like, I make myself right 9 times out of 10, like almost 10 times out of 10. Make yourself right. And so I think that like if you are making yourself right about making a decision, it is amazing how much more you want to continue to make decisions if you're making yourself right. Like I just decide that it's right. If I want to, you know, like if we're talking about food, if I want to drink the wine, I am making myself right that absolutely 100% tonight's the night I'm going to have wine and it's going to be awesome. If I want to, scrap my career and do something else, I 100% am making myself right. I'm going to find every ounce of proof. I will find fucking proof of everything that I want.
And that's so funny you said that because I think a lot of people do the opposite. They'll look for proof that they were wrong. And like both exist and both can be true at the same time. So you can decide, okay, I'm really nervous about making this career move. So I'm going to like go with this other job. And then you go with the other job and you can find a million reasons that were right for taking that job, but you can equally find as many reasons that were wrong. So it's all about like what you're going to focus on. So if you can focus on like the right ones, even if the wrong ones are there, it's fine. But like the right ones or where your energy is going, like it's going to feel better to you.
And what you focus on is what you find.
Yeah.
Like I use this stupid analogy all the time as perfect because I was flying last night. I literally will 100%, if I make a flight, I'm like, duh, I always make my flight. if I miss my flight, I'm like, oh, perfect. Something's going to happen that I was supposed to miss that flight. And I will find proof that like missing that flight was the greatest thing that could have happened to me. Like maybe I'll sit beside someone, maybe, someone buy me a glass of wine, maybe I'll, have extra time in the Delta Lounge and, whatever, but I will find proof that everything is working out for me. I will find proof that everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. And I think that allows me to be confident, allows me to continue to make decisions. And, like we were just saying, like the happier you are, the more confident you are, the easier it is for you to get everything that you want. And you'll just find proof that everything that you want is fucking existing. I can do this with money. I can do this with jobs. I can do this with food. I can do it with whatever. Like I'll just find proof that everything's fucking working out for me.
Yeah, I think the same way too, but like it's a conscious choice, I think, for a lot of people to start practicing that. Because there's like the negativity bias, right? Which says that the brain's gonna always look for like threats, or the brain's gonna naturally like look for the negative stuff. So like if you
Until you program it.
yes, but it
You and
takes
I've spent my whole fucking last 15 years of life programming myself. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if your people understand this, but like our brains are like a computer. They're hardwired a certain way, like as a child.
yeah, I call it autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot. We are hardwired as a certain way to find certain things, to do certain things in life. If you want a different life, all you fucking have to do is reprogram the computer in your head.
Yes.
I'm not telling you it's easy, but it's a computer. It can be reprogrammed.
Yes. And I think that's, but like important just to make note, like I know I didn't, I'm sure you didn't. We weren't like naturally like this. This was like
No.
intentional. And like if we can do
Right.
it, anybody could do it. It's just a matter of like deciding. There you go, deciding.
There you go. Deciding. We're just deciding that this is what, like, it is wild. If you just decide that this is what you want in life, it is wild what you can actually create when you decide it and program your mind to find it.
Cool. Love that. Amazing. All right. So at the end, I like to do rapid fire questions.
Oh my
So
God, I'm so excited because I love you.
question number one, what is a decision, if you could think of one, that at the time felt really wrong? And then how did you kind of like spin it in your mind to make it the right decision for yourself, if you could think of a time?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. It was interesting. I just did a post this morning, and so I'll just use a stupid decision. But back probably about 10, I'd say probably 10 to 12 years ago, I was offered a job that was probably going to pay me $1 million off of my first year minimum. If I was still at that career, I'd be making 10 to 15 million. It's selling high-end luxury properties for one of the biggest developers in the world. But I said no to it. And at the time, I felt like the biggest idiot. But like, again, going back to trusting your intuition, I knew deep down I couldn't do it. And I'm so, so grateful that I didn't do it. But at the time, when I was making probably $100,000 a year, barely, it sounded like the wrong decision.
Wait, so how much could you have made?
Oh, I would have easily made $1 million my first year. I'd probably be making 10 to 15 million now.
Now, at that time, were you just that strong within yourself that you just like had this internal framework where you're just like, no, I'm doing what I feel. I'm not going like with the logical million
Yeah,
dollars.
I knew it was. So I have been, this is kind of wild, but I have always been around wealth, and I've been around power. I've been around wealth. I've been around status. And I knew if I took this job, I would have lost my marriage, because I knew I would have got wrapped up in a world that I didn't want to get wrapped up in. It's never been my vibe, but it's also been like when you're around, it's like some people wonder how certain things can happen, how people can make decisions, or how people can get wrapped up into things that are wild. And it's like, I'm like, it's fucking easy. Throw a person into that type of situation for 6 months or a year, you're gonna become who you surround yourself with. You'll make excuses of why it's okay. You'll make excuses why it's possible. It's how people start to steal. It's how infidelity happens. It's how the wild, wild west of, what's craziness in this world happens, because if you're around people who are doing it, you'll find excuses for why it's okay. And that world was just the wild, wild west. And it's definitely, enticing for sure. There's no doubt about it. Like, who wouldn't want to be wrapped around with money and celebrity and status and all of that shit. But I just knew that if I took that job, I would become a person I didn't want to become, and I would have lost the things that were most important to me.
Damn. I don't even know if I could have made that decision at that time. That's very wise. That's amazing. All right, next question. What are your feelings on crop tops?
You know what's interesting? I've never worn them until like the last couple of years, but now I wear them
Every time
with
I see the crop
high-waisted
top,
jeans.
I get so excited, I have to tell you.
I wear them nowadays. So I literally posted one, just like when I it was my birthday, I was like 42 or whatever, and I had like a higher waisted jean, but it showed probably like an inch of my stomach, and I was like, fuck it, might as well, whatever.
I love that. And she posted about it on her stories, and I was like, crop tops until I die. I will literally be.
Yes, I loved it. And it's so funny because one of my other clients, Erica's like, was it you who said I was gonna be buried in a
Yes, that was
crop?
me.
Yeah, it was you or Erica?
I said the buried one, yeah.
Yeah, the buried one. You both basically said the exact same fucking thing. I was like, yes, I love you.
That's so funny. What is your number one tip for, because if people are going to start to embrace this lifestyle, if they're not used to it, of like being decisive and making decisions, I think like the number one fear is how other people will perceive them, what other people are going to think, and like sort of getting over that. So like, what's a tip that you have? Like, how do you, because I know you obviously being somebody online have haters. How do you deal with the haters?
Yeah, there's not a ton of haters, but at the end of the day, I always come back to like literally, why am I going to allow a person who literally I wouldn't trade any part of my life for their life? Why am I going to let them affect what I'm doing? And I think that that's like a really kind of I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that a long time ago. If you wouldn't trade 100% of your life for the person who's hating on you, why are they allowed to have an opinion on your life? And anyone who really, I don't know, like it's kind of wild to say, but I don't know anyone who I would trade their life for my life. Now, bits and pieces. I'd love her skin. I'd love her
Yeah.
stomach. I'd love, her money, her, whatever. But I think that like, I don't think that there's one person that I would trade every ounce of their life for every ounce of my life.
Which is amazing. But that's because you've been, so that's the end result of making all the decisions for yourself. Is like you get a life.
Like, this is like a 15-year plus process. Yeah, 15-year plus process of getting to this point for sure.
Yes, I love that. But right, but you started, so you started off as a mess, as we all are, and then it's been a gradual whatever. But like that's
And I still like, I'm still, parts of me are messy, and I think that that's like really helpful to say, is like, I do not have all my shit together. I still have very messy parts of my life. I still fucking cry. I still have bad days. I still have family drama. I still have life drama. I still have situations that make me scared. Like, I'm fucking human, but overall, like, I can get myself back pretty easily just because it's a muscle that I've flexed for 15 years.
right. So it's just something you have to consciously work on.
Totally. Yeah.
Last question. I always thought it funny, if you and I were to go on a trip to Vegas, we would never even see each other. We would have totally
Never.
opposite trips. I would be coming home at 6 a.m. You would be waking up at 6 a.m. So I want to know, what is Christina's guilty pleasure? Like, I need to know.
Oh, it's like, I'm a gambler. Like,
Are
gambling
you?
is,
Okay, that's fun.
oh, 100%. 100%. I will bet on anything. I love to gamble. Sports gambling is like one of my favorite things. Like, I could go to Vegas. Like, I'm a 6 a.m. to like
You live close
10.
to Vegas too, right? Like it's a close flight. Like you're very
No,
close.
it's not that close.
Is
It's
it
not
no?
that close.
I don't know,
We
Joe.
we go to Vegas maybe 4 to 5 times a year, which is a lot. Like, I feel like that's a lot, but we probably go to Vegas like 4 to 5 times a year. We love. I'm very lucky. My husband and I like the exact same shit. Basically, like, we both love sports. We both love concerts. We both love to gamble. We both, love to. Well, my husband could probably party with you. I am not a huge partier at all. Like, I'm like 2 drinks maximum. I'd like to be in bed by like 11 in Vegas. Like, I'm here for it. I will wake up at 5 a.m. I like look at the 5 a.m. Starbucks. I know Starbucks at the Cosmopolitan opens at 5 a.m. Usually one of the first people in line when everyone else is still awake from the night before. But yeah, that's probably like my guilty pleasure is probably like just, travel. I'm cheap with some things. I'm not so cheap with other things. But travel, sporting events, I just like to do fun things. Like, fun things to me could be like going on a hike, staying here local, or going to Vegas.
Got it. Yeah. See, hikes to me not so fun, but I got it. Cool. So like you're so gambling would be like your like guilty pleasure.
Gambling would probably be like the like what is it called? Like your advice, not advice, vice.
Advice.
A
Yeah.
vice. Yeah, a vice.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. This was great.
Oh my God, I loved it. Thanks so much.
Let me know on Instagram if you guys got a lot out of this episode. I'm telling you, I used to be so indecisive, and just training that muscle and learning to be a more decisive person really changed my quality of life. The biggest aha moment I had in that journey was what Christy and I were talking about, where it's like there really is no wrong answer. If you sort of embrace that mentality, like you can't go wrong. So make sure you're following us on Instagram at ask_Mish. I want to hear what you thought of this episode, and all of Christina's contact information, including her Instagram handle, will be in the show notes as well. So make sure you check her out and say hello. Let her know if you enjoyed this podcast, and we will check you guys out next week.